Hey everyone, it's Isaiah Houston. I'm here with Jib and Lundrity, here to talk to you guys about Darkwing Blast, YCS Mini, and how that's gonna shape up the game moving forward. So, how's everybody doing tonight? How do you feel about Darkwing Blast in general as a set?
Doing good, doing good. I think it's a really good set, and we're going to see a lot of impact once YCS Mini comes.
I agree.
How do you guys feel that it shapes the meta, helps change the meta? What decks benefit the most from a lot of the new cards coming up?
So in terms of what decks benefit the most, I think Tearlament definitely does. Even though the Bistic cards come out, or the Bisteel cards, they're called the TCG, which are pretty good against Tier. Tier gets a lot of new cards they can use. You get the Bisteel cards. Tier's getting 5 new cards themselves, a bunch of which are pretty good. The Sprite Link, Sprend, which is playable in Tier as well. There's a lot of new cards they can use. So I think Tier definitely benefits the most. Sprite gets a couple new tools as well, which would be good for them. Sprite and Tier will probably still be the most represented decks. But then you have a bunch of other rogue strategies but kind of get more tools as well, like Dragon Link. Even though they just lost Chaos Ruler. So the Bastille cards are really good in Dragon Link. That's good. Despia can kind of have some cool new variants depending. And yeah, those are the main things that change in terms of decks.
Yeah, I definitely think that Tower Elements and Sprite, obviously already being the forerunner with Power of the Elements, I think they just both get a big boost from the next set. I still think that Tower Element is a little bit ahead when it comes to just power, especially with the banless and them not really getting hit at all. I think that kind of cements them as the deck to beat going forward, but I think there are a lot of cool things that the next set bring into the equation, you know?
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of those specific cards and how they impact the game and how they impact the specific meta decks. And I'm gonna have a link in the description below for the card list for Darkling Blast for anybody who hasn't done their research yet, looking into a lot of these new cards. Check out the set. So I just want to talk about the tier cards in general, since they got the most support. They got about 5 new cards. So yeah, what do you guys think is impactful? We know there's Grief, we know there's Scream, we know there's Heartbeats, there's Lucario. So I guess let's start with Lucarios, a card that is pretty strong in attack. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Having high attack stats is still strong in general. So having being a 3K body and then being able to negate Nibiru, how do you think that card is going to shape up how Tillerman's plays? It obviously makes them scarier because they don't lose to Nib as much. Where do you guys put that card? And what do you immediately think to cut from the extra deck and tiers?
I think Lucaros is really good. Like you said, the deck plays around Nib a lot better now, which is nice. Because that was the card before, at least an event ago. Some people were playing against Tier. They're starting to play more hand traps to try to beat the Danger Tier deck. But now it's you beat Nib with an engine card, which is nice. The good thing about the card is that it is not dark type, it's water. So it helps you play on Super Probably more. It makes Super Probably a little bit worse too. That and a couple other things. Then, the fact that it's easy to make, it just takes Kit another tier, means that you can just make it super early on, every time before your fifth summon, and you can always beat Nib. And even if they have Nib plus another hand trap, really awkward because if they don't stop you from making Lucaros, plus Veiler, Nib plus Imperm, still summon back to Lucaros, and then if you have tier field fill up, Nib can't even crash into the or attack over the Lucaros. So that card is really very good for the deck.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't have said it much better myself. I think that Lucaros actually is probably one of the better cards in the set. Nibiru was already a low impact hand trap in the format for the most part because against Terra Element, it was really hard in order to make Nibiru a card that really just ended their turn. They always really got value through Nibiru, and then obviously Nibiru wasn't really a very good card against Sprite. But now with Lulucaros being able to just negate Nibiru, I think Nibiru kind of is going to be a side deck card for the most, at least at first, until better counterplay is found. But at first glance, it looks like Nibiru is kind of being relegated to a side deck card for now.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. No, I mean, I don't really think I can add much insight there. I think you guys went pretty good, especially with Lund going in about the field spell application. So I kind of want to talk about just the spell cards now. Specifically Heartbeats and Scream. Scream because it's being played in the OCG. So I'm just curious what you guys think about how much it'll be played in the TCG. Is it a staple card? I personally don't like the card too much, but Yeah, that's Scream, and then Heartbeats, obviously being a searchable mine out. So curious to hear your thoughts on those cards.
So my first impression about Scream was that the card was lackluster because it feels like its spell doesn't do anything by itself. It doesn't like so that was like initially like I wasn't a fan of it because of that, but in messing with the card and testing with the card, I think the card is really really good because basically like it doesn't do anything by itself, but it does something for another tier, and it like even though it only mills 3 on your turn, playing on your opponent's turn is fine. So it basically says mill 6. If you see with any tier, which you play like 16 effective, you're gonna see a tier basically with it. So it's always gonna be doing something anyway. And then also, effective search a trap is really, really, really relevant because it means tier element crime. You can get to that plus Sulliek a lot more consistently, so it makes crime a very real card in the deck, which helps the deck better versus cards like evenly matched and talents, with more so the former evenly matched. We generally have great counters for before, especially now that they like hit like punk variant. Now it's like you can consistently set up Sulliek plus crime. You get an Omni Negate so often because Scream can search any trap card. And then like I said, it's a lot better to draw than I thought it would be because playing on your opponent's turn is fine, so you mill 6, and that's really good. Also in the mirror, the attack reduction Scream gives is really like surprisingly really good, especially if you have field spell up. That basically says your monsters gain 500, their monsters lose 500. That 1,000 difference is actually like pretty big in the mirror. So I think Scream is. I like it a lot. I think it's really good. Also, you have with the Bestial cards, you have multiple ways to like through Beatrice to get like your tier cards in the graveyard. So you can just like you can just send it to the graveyard like every game pretty much. So you're always getting like crime or whatever else you need. But I think I like the card a lot. And as for Heartbeats, I think Heartbeat is it's alright. I mean, the big thing people are saying about it is that it's a mine out, which is true. It's not as good as Scream, I don't think. It's like the graveyard effects kind of. If I had to trap from graveyard to hand, not the worst, but I think Scream is like pretty solid. And Heartbeats is I.
Yeah. I mean, I think Scream is a good card. Obviously, being able to add Sulliek or Crime just is really good because before the deck had an issue with, especially like with being able to play Crime because like you're usually only going before you were only able to search one spell or trap off of your Kakalos, but now having a card that's specifically relegated to searching the trap cards allows you to like diversify the trap cards that you were playing before. But like unlike Lun, I do think that Heartbeats is a really good card. I'm a big fan of Heartbeats personally. I think it being able to deal with cards like the Runic Field spell while playing around their protection and also dealing with Nibiru dealing with Sulliek in the mirror match, I think that the card is like really good. And then also the graveyard effect being able to add back a trap is like helps your grind game a lot because like sometimes you're not able to search for cards like Sulliek and Crime, or like if you mill the one Crime sometimes in a post side scenario, being able to add back the Crime I think is really nice. So I think that they're both great additions to the deck, and I don't know. I think the deck is just shaping up to be very good for Minneapolis.
One thing
Yeah,
about Scream 2 I think is really nice is what did I say? Well, a couple applications. Number one, you can pop it with the tier. Like you can open it. You can pop it with like you can use it to like mill, and then you can like pop it later with the tier fill spell to search a trap. Which I think is a really cool application.
oh yeah, that's kind of crispy. I didn't think of that. I like that. No, I mean Scream is a good card for reason why you mentioned being like the trap searcher of the deck. Um, I guess the only thing I would like add is I'm still not sure about how much I will play that card, like in what number, because it's a card that I never want to see going second. Like I guess like this biggest application there is like the attack reduction, but like it doesn't really like break boards going second. And we're still in the format where people are making boards, so I say that's my only problem with the card. OCG is a little slower because they have Max C, so I think that's why they play like maybe 2 or 3 there. And then Heartbeats, I think if you were playing like one out in the deck, like playing Heartbeats is good because it shuffles back. So in the mirror match, is like effectively, you give them back to Select, but it doesn't destroy it. So I think that's pretty good. And then I'm not even gonna discuss Grief. I think that card's booty. But
I agree. I think Grief is
Yeah.
bad. It's basically like an effective. If you think about what it does, it's like another Foolish Burial. But like, I wasn't even playing. I wasn't a big fan of Foolish Burial until anyway. So like, I'm just not. I'm not really a huge Grief person. I think
Yeah.
I think it's summoning Visa Starfrost isn't really like good either. So I'm
yeah,
not a fan of that card.
but like you mentioned, the Sprite Sprine, it seems like it does a little more justice for tier elements than it does Sprite. Now, one of the things I was curious about, because you guys are like big like combo guys, um, how do you guys, and this is just like me spitballing, right? How do you guys see the combo trees going by, like, kind of always wanting to end on Elf in a sense, even in the tier deck, but then summoning Sprine as well to mill a Merly, since you can't link any of those off the same turn that you summon them? Like, how are you guys thinking that people will eventually try to go about utilizing both of those cards within like a combo, within like getting to a end board or a specific goal?
So for starters, I think in terms of the combo tree, I think Sprint makes it so that sometimes Merely is better than Rhinoheart. Especially if
Okay.
you're playing something like Curious, in terms of playing through Disruption. Also, I think Sprint is a card, from my experience, it's not a card you go for every game. It's a card you go for when you need to, when you get disrupted, and when you have to go for it, basically. So, like, most of the time, you don't have to be in a situation where you have to choose between Elf and the Sprint. Uh, yeah. And there's also a world where people still play Gigantic in the deck. Even if you're not playing, like, what's it called? Even if you're not playing, like, Jet or Jet Smasher Package or whatever, there's a world where people still play Gigantic, so you can use the Sprint for that anyway. But even if you don't play it, I don't think there's, like, them conflicting like that comes up too often, because more often than not, you're only making Sprint when you need to, like, use it to play through Disruption. Then even, like,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you can make Sprint and EMZ. Elf, like, target protection from Elf is nice, but it's not like you can do without it. So you can still play if you have to summon Elf in the main monster zone. So yes,
Yeah. I think Sprint becomes a lot more important in the deck, obviously. I think that you can send Merly without using its effect now. A lot of the times off of like a card like a Kalos or Reinhardt, and then revive it later and then make Sprint. So it kind of always guarantees that the Merly fusion will go through if you just save it for the end. Because like before it felt that you were able to get two fusions consistently or like resolve two names consistently, and then the third one felt like RNG a lot of the times. But I think Sprint kind of makes it that all three of the names being milled are guaranteed, which I think is really nice. Also, I think a card Beatrice becomes a bigger part of the tier element strategy and effectively replaces Curious in
Curious.
a lot of positions. Yeah.
Beatrice
Yeah.
is so
Oh,
good in the deck. Oh my god, it does everything you want it to do.
so Beatrice, when you guys mentioned Beatrice, you guys are talking about like a variant of tiers that abuses the Bistic cards.
Yeah. So basically, I'll say first of all, I think if your deck can play them, I think every deck should play the Bisted cards post Darkwing Blast.
Okay.
Then, so the Bistic card's level 6 in Garura, the Super Polyfusion is level 6 also. So you just see one Bisted, you can make Beatrice. And Beatrice is really good. It basically kind of does what Curious does, but it does it twice. Once during your opponent's turn, once during your turn. You can send a tier monster to fusion summon. You can send Selly to add a tier. You can send Scream to add a trap. Beatrice basically adds any tier monster, adds lets you fusion summon, adds a tier trap, and then lets you play on your opponent's turn. It's light, so it doesn't play in the Super Poly. You can do the same play you do if Redoer to dodge Dark Ruler, so it plays around Dark Ruler as well. It just plays basically it's good versus every single board breaker. It helps you play through hand traps, kinda, and then it also it's just it's really versatile, which is nice. So Beatrice is really really good in the deck. It's so good.
You know who else is a level 6?
But
Visa Starfrost.
I don't know about that one. Not Take
This is
Visa
also
Starfrost
really
is
good.
a thing. That is true. You could play Visa Starfrost
Yeah.
also.
So you're basically using the Bisted engine. So you're playing a heavy Bisted package with a smaller tier package, and then kind of like treeing into some combos maybe with Sprint or some combos maybe with Beatrice.
Yeah. I
Right.
wouldn't even say like a smaller tier element package because the reason why I think the Bistas are so broken is because they also count as defensive card slots. So when you're counting defensive card slots, you have to you count them also. So their combo pieces going first and their defensive card slots going second. So they're very versatile.
I'm not sure how many, like, what number of business cards is correct in Tyrk, because there's a lot of ways you can go about it. But you can play like a smaller package. You can play a bigger one with like Lubellion. But like I said, I think I would play the Bistic cards in every deck. Your deck can play them, which is most decks. So in terms of that, at least like 3 Magnum, 1 Druid Worm. Interior, at least like 3 Druid Worm, 3 Magnum probably. So I'd probably play at least 6. Only issue
I know they
becomes
have a
if you play like
searcher
a ton
too.
of Bistic cards, is if you like when you face against matchups like this is random. The deck probably won't be represented much, but like Lundrity, for instance, might have a lot of dead cards in that matchup. So overall, I think the Bistic cards are really good though.
Don't they have a searcher too? It's a big one.
Yeah, it's called Lubellion. It's not a hand trap, but it searches your Bistic cards basically. They can get you access to the Bistic trap, which is like disruption. So it's pretty good card.
Okay. I mean, is there any other variants that you guys think would be represented for mini as far as tier? Well,
I think
definitely
they're
gonna be the best to do it.
technically, you could argue the branded variant could get more tools. Branded High Spirits is also a better card now, especially because you don't have to play the Extract Brick and Death Frog. You can play Lulucaros because that's Aqua level 8 with 2500 defense. There are a couple Bisted tier variants you can play. You can play a heavy package with Lubellion, the card you just mentioned. You can play a smaller package. You can play like a Bisted like pure deck. You can play a Bisted Danger variant. Uh, you can play like a heavy combo variant and like a lot of good, just generic good stuff cards. There are a lot of ways you can go about it. I'm not sure what's going to see the most success at Minneapolis, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The format's gonna be so wide open. It's like really fun.
Oh,
I definitely think high spirits is gonna be something that is like that should be at least considered within deck building, even if you do like tier bisted without like um, a lot of like danger cards or anything. Just to have that ability to play around the bisted cards because they can't DD Crow you. You don't control a monster. And I think once you resolve the kit search, the DD Crow becomes not as effective. So just go and draw phase, send Lucario, and then fusing into kit, and then getting that search there, getting that Merly or getting that Selic. Pretty strong. I'm actually not sure like how many Kalita hearts we're gonna see on M boards because there's so much combos that people can do right now with
yeah.
the new support.
And from my experience playing the deck, the Darkwing Blast cards, I'm not ending on Kaleido Heart as much. I don't really feel like I need to. I'm still making an insane board. One benefit of Kaleido Heart was that not only did it work well with Celiac, but it also played on Super Poly really well. But your new M boards you can make also play on Super Poly really well. So yeah, normally it's I'm summoning the Kaleido Heart during my opponent's turn instead of like ending on it. Like, could you prioritize like other cards now a little bit more? Yeah, we'll see what's up.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of something that Lon was saying earlier, Lulu Carl's being a water comes up so much because it's just constantly reborning itself and it's not really a lot that you can do to interact with it. I think because the biscuit cards are so good, it's actually gonna weirdly cause DD Crow to see less play because people are just gonna replace DD Crow with the biscuit slots, and the biscuit cards do not interact with Lulu Colos. So it's very weird.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that while Lund was talking. I was like, Diddy Crow, yeah, and that whole like idea that you had mentioned. So that's actually interesting. Um, honestly, I think depending on like what type of hand traps you go, like you could consider both, but like even maining Crow and then siding the Bistids, or like maining the Bistids and siding the Crow because having multiple Crows against T elements is not bad, but It really just depends how you're building your deck and what you're building it to like do. But
Yeah,
Crow
for
in
sure.
general is just tough to play because you don't know what you're gonna play against. But I wanted to move on to Sprite. Um, so what do you guys think about like Sprite? How should people be thinking about the deck, building the deck? For many with some of the new cards, I've seen
I
some
mean,
cool stuff with like Ibley, Locke, and Gale Dogra. What do you guys think?
I mean, as a lot of people know, Lund definitely knows. Sprite is like my pet deck. I love Sprite. It's one of my favorite archetypes. I think it's definitely going to be hard without Ronin. I was definitely expecting Toad to get banned on this ban list, and I was going to prepare accordingly. But Ronin actually like kind of hurts more because it makes it so that like Swap Frog is like a card that I don't even want to play in my deck because Swap Frog actually just is a brick at this point.
Yeah, that's true. Technically, like with Sprint, you can end on Toad just as consistently. It's like that is true. Swap Frog is like it's more cards you don't want to draw. There's also some cool combos with Sprint you can do with like Cyberstein and like Nemesis, Flag or whatever the road is called. But those combos are like more YouTube comboys and like realistic because they just require like a lot of resources. Yeah, they're also Ibly stuff as well, like you mentioned. I mean, Sprint's very versatile. You can do a lot of things because they can just like foolish any level too. So there
Yeah.
are a bunch of ways you can like play the go towards the deck.
I think the Ibley stuff is actually pretty crazy because you have the ability with Sprint to set up smashers, to set up IP, and to set up the Sprint itself. So you have so many ways that if they don't draw droplets or like a Bistic card, they don't, well, they can't even really out the first Ibley to even summon the Bistic card. So because as soon as they try to normal summon a monster, you can smashers it, you can uh, IP. I've seen a combo where you can actually IP into Equimax pointing to Ibley, and now the Ibley can't even attack. So uh, Sprint obviously has the other effect that can bounce when something is summoned. So Ibley is looking pretty good in Sprite right now.
I agree.
Um, yeah, I think those are like the heavy hitters. What do you
I
guys
think it's
think?
one
Oh,
card
you have
that
something
we're.
else too?
Hmm?
Okay.
Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna
you
say
guys,
it's one card that I think we're overlooking. I think it's Sprite Double Cross.
oh, the double cross. I was very excited for that card, but then when it hit, when I was preparing for swap to get banned. I mean, swap get hit to one, and I would be cool with that. But then like it didn't, so I kind of like stopped caring about the Sprite double cross at that point. But I think it's still a crazy card.
Yeah,
How would you
definitely.
like utilize that card going
Um,
forward?
I think it's better to search Double Cross than to search Smashers on turn one. Because I
Hmm.
think it effectively does what Smashers was doing by removing a monster, but you get to keep the resource in your graveyard and you get to keep the Smasher for next turn. Because I felt like one of the issues that Sprite always had was like when you used your Smasher on the first turn, people were playing multiple Smashers because like okay, on turn three your monsters are little, so you sometimes need another Smasher. But like if you play Double Cross in your deck, you get to just keep the Smashers in your deck and just search Double Cross instead, and it effectively does the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, only thing is, uh, no. Only thing is you have how much you care about mine and how much you care about like Runix being a thing. Do
Yeah,
you want like multiple copies of Smashers? Do you want to respect the game one? Those are only like things that I would say will make
that's
a
true.
difference. But I guess only thing with Sprite, like, how are you feeling about like the Angler stuff or like the runic stuff? Do you feel like that stuff is worth it?
Yeah, I think Angler is mandatory because of Sprint. I think it's the best card to use with Sprint.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to proc the Angler, right? Like, you play
Yeah,
Angler
Runics,
is
you have
so
three
me.
discards. You have the danger, not the danger cards. You have the adventure cards. You have super poly. You have droplets. That's pretty good.
yeah.
Okay. Unless anyone has anything else, I wanted to move on from talking about like a little meta and to moving and talking about some of the sleepers. So, what are some of the sleeper decks? I know Lund earlier he mentioned branded. So, like, what are some sleeper decks you think will be there for many?
So I think the decks that are like most sleeper, I'd probably say it's a Dragon Link. I think
Okay,
Naturia, even though we don't have the Shiva cards, that could potentially still be like really good. Then I think, especially when nobody respects it, nobody knows what it does. And then I also think Draco Slayer is also really solid as well. And the
okay.
latter two decks are decks that people will not be familiar with at all. And then they could those decks are like could easily just like sweep people left and right, depending on like who's piloting them. So I think those are like some of the sleeper decks I'd say.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Draco Slayer. I just ordered my Draco Slayer core.
Oh God, yes.
Just so like, what's up with that? I'm sitting down. I'm still trying to learn the basic 2 card combo. You know, but like, why is Draco Slayer competitive besides being like a 1-2 card combo? Like, are you leaning towards more of like a combo heavy variant, or like something with maybe like 14 hand traps in it? What do you think is the best way to play Draco Slayers?
So I think
Um,
you can go ahead, Joe. You're good.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, so Draco Slayer has a couple of things going for it. Obviously, going into this next format, a card like Abyss Dweller is very powerful. Obviously, Draco Slayers being like a rank 4 toolbox decks, you can summon Dweller very efficiently. Also, because a lot of the attributes that you are using don't really revolve around light and dark, they play around the Bissa cards very well. So you have that going for you. And it's still one of the only decks in the upcoming format that can utilize cards like Artifact Scythe. So I think those things altogether make Draco Slayer very promising in the upcoming format.
Got it. Lund, what are you thinking about? How would you play Draco Slayers if you had to go to
Uh,
the YCS Mini with Draco Slayers?
I just played as like you have a lot of the deck has a lot of different inboard options. Because like you're not locked in any like archetypal stuff. So a lot of different ways you can go about it. In terms of like non-engine cards, you mentioned like playing like 14. I don't think that's necessarily the way to go. But I think I have space for a decent amount of non-engine cards, relative to like other pen decks, which is nice. And like you mentioned before, the deck can play with like 2 cards, 2 to 3 card combos, which is really good for a pendulum deck. I think going first, your deck is making endboards that like no deck is beating with just engine. You need non-engine cards to win. And like Jib said, half the non-engine cards are dead against you, the Bistio cards, so that's really good for Draco
Yeah,
Slayer as well.
And I also wanted to say that it's funny that you mentioned how hard the deck is, because the deck is actually like really hard to pilot. Like even us when we were getting ready and learning the new cards, the deck is actually has a really high ceiling and a really high learning curve. Like in my opinion, it's definitely a harder deck than DDD's was, and DDD was a pretty complex combo deck. So in order to help that, me and Len have been working on a combo sheet in order to map out all of the different combo lines for Draco Slayer. I've been telling people on my stream about it for the last couple of days. It's also going to have other decks that people are going to be interested in from the new set, like Naturia. Blackwing is a big one. I know a lot of people are Blackwing fans out here. So we're going to be creating a product in order to help those players. And we can definitely hook you up with it, Isaiah, so you can learn your Draco Slayers, bros.
I
For your
appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. So you finally mentioned it. You mentioned Black Wings. That was that's like I feel like that's like a casual player's wet dreams right there. How good is Black Wings?
100%. Really solid. It's like a meme. People are like, oh, Blackwing, because the deck hasn't been like meta relevant since what, like Edison or a little bit after Edison or something like that. So it's been like 11, 10 years. I think deck's really solid. The sport's really good. A lot of people have overlooked it. I think at the same time, from everything I looked online about the deck when I was trying to learn it, a lot of people don't know how to play the deck. So I don't think anyone's gonna have success with it. Also, like when I was trying to figure out how to play around Nibiru, for instance, in Black Wings, I've seen zero combos online of people doing how to play around Nibiru with the new support. Nobody knows how to do it, so it took me a bit to figure it out myself. So I think the cards are really good. Like Konami did a really good job with the Blackwing cards. I don't think it's the type of deck that like. I think it's real. I think the cards are really good. The deck is really solid. Is it as good as tier? No, it's not. Realistically speaking, did you play this setup tier? Probably not, unless you're really like Black Wings. To be fair, so it probably won't see much success. But I think the deck is really solid.
But
If you
if
have like
you
a good
master
player that
the
pilots
deck,
it, what you said?
so if you mastered it, or like you say, you're a really good player. Like, can you sneak into the top 32 with like Black Wings or Draco Slayers?
Draco Slayer 100%.
Yeah.
I think the deck could do really really well. Oh, Black Wings, I think so. Yeah, I would win the YCS,
I
but I think I could top it with Black Wings.
I think the biggest downfall to Black Wings is Super Poly, right? Because I don't know how we don't know how much Nib is going to be played. Probably be relegated to a side deck card if anything.
Yeah,
Um,
so
like you said, there's so much you can do with Black Wings, but Super Poly is tough.
Super Poly is tough. Doesn't like completely beat you though. Like the way you play, you end on a lot of disruption if they Super Poly you. You should still have multiple forms of interruption. The Super Poly, and they have to use 2 cards for it. So like, I'm not. I don't think Super Poly is the end of the world. It is like the best break a card against you, just because you have like easy counters to everything else. It's easy counters to Dark Ruler, easy counters to like evenly. You can make negates, yada yada yada. Nib is pretty solid against the deck, but you can play around it. You can play in a way
Yeah.
that you guarantee disruption if you get Nib, basically. You'd be like, oh, I got Nib, but I still have X, Y, Z, yada yada yada. To use my opponent's turn. So Nib isn't like oh, you just draw Nib, you auto win the game.
Yeah.
Like
I think the biggest
oh, go ahead.
no, no, finish up.
I would say like let's say you have like Simon, right? Simon the Poison Wind, the Blackwing that came out in 2018, 2019, something like that. Just that card and any other Blackwing guarantees you disruption through Nibiru, which I think is like pretty good. But yeah.
Yeah. Don't you have a 1 card combo too with Spark to get you like hot red in the trap?
Is it?
Synchros, right?
Yes. Like I said, Simon just with any of the Blackwing pops off. The new Blackwing Futuri, however you want to pronounce it. That card does a lot by itself as well. So the biggest issue with Blackwings before was that none of the monsters in the main deck generated a lot of advantage, right? You had Bora, Gale, some of the most iconic Blackwings. They special on themselves, but they don't do anything besides that. They don't do anything to help you generate advantage. So that was like the biggest problem with the deck. But all the new monsters, Sudri, Shamal, Vada, they'll help you generate advantage. I think I'm doing a really good job at like tackling the issues of the deck and fixing them, I think.
Yeah. I think Konami's done really good with legacy support, and like Black Wings is another proof of that. I think my biggest draws to like why would I play Black Wings is because you get 6 floodgates, not 3 rivalry, but you can play 3 rivalry, you can play 3 goals, and if you want. If you want a main deck of flood, you can main deck rivalry for the meta, and then you can side in goes in for like from the recent matchups that just wouldn't lose to rivalry. And then you have a pretty easy to summon boss that is unaffected, and that definitely holds weight. A little tougher against tiers since like they naturally have bigger monsters, but a lot of deck would struggle against a 3K body that is unaffected by card effects and becomes a snatch steal at the end phase.
Yep. Especially against like Sprite too, like the Runic Fairness Sprite. If they use a Runic spell on you, like you can't go battle phase. It's like how they're getting rid of your full armor master. So it's really good against Sprite. Against tier, like you said, it's Medilfix takes on a lot of big bodies with the tier field spell. If they had that, all of a sudden like Vital Heart's 35, Lucario is 35. Still have ways to protect your thing by battle, but it's card's definitely better in other matchups than against tier. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll give up a little bit of that spice. Well, not really spice, but I was thinking, like, when I was looking at some of the Black Wings, I was like, why don't people kind of play it like a combo deck, right? And well, you can, because you can run a lot of non-engine cards, but I wouldn't be opposed to just sticking, because the deck is so consistent that you could just stick in like 3 evenlies into the main deck. Like, I go first, I'm still probably going to combo anyway. Probably a lot of tier players not going to be playing hand traps. I don't think pure tier is good when you have the Bistic cards, right? So like you're gonna combo off. If you go second with the evenly, then like you just win the game, right? That's kind of how I was thinking. Like play like 3 evenly, and another like go second card, probably mix maybe in the Bistas in there. that can make some good single plays too. And you have a really strong tier matchup out the gate.
Maybe one unfortunate thing about the Bistic cards and Black Wings is that they conflict a little bit with Simon. Because you can't use Simon if you control a monster. They're still playable in the deck, I'll say that. It just conflicts sometimes. Yeah, I think Black Wings are pretty solid. Pretty underrated. Say that.
Got it. Okay, I wanted to segue into speaking about some of like the specific cards. So the new Prankachops for the new archetype. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Fenrir.
Yeah.
Cautionary law, Fenrir.
I don't know about the first half, but yes, the main part of the name is Fenrir. Easier
Is
part to pronounce.
that card mandatory in someone's deck list? Like I'm going to YCS Mini. Like, are you telling me? I'm like, hey Jib, like, do I play this card? Like, is that mandatory?
It depends on what deck you're playing.
It depends on what deck. Okay. Well, let's say I'm trying to win the event, so I'm playing Sprite or I'm playing Tier.
Definitely. I think in Sprite, probably you play it because, like the deck has a issue with big monsters, and it is a form of removal, and it just generates more copies of itself. But in a deck like Tier, I don't think you need it. Also, you have to keep in mind that Fenrir conflicts with the Bisset cards. So if you're going second and you open a Bisset card plus Fenrir, it's kind of awkward. Because if you Bisset them, then like Fenrir is a dead card.
And that's like
So
that's my biggest like drawback of the card, because it's like if you compare like what's better, Fenrir or like the Bistic cards, especially if your deck has synergy with the Bistic cards and just choosing the Bistic cards like every day. I will say something. Let's say you're playing against Tier, right? You summon a Bistic card. You do have ways to remove it turn one, whether it's like Field Floor or Kaleidoheart. So sometimes it will be removed, but there'll be a lot of times too where you just draw them both together and it's like, oh, not ideal.
No, I think the card is cool. Definitely, that one of the biggest drawbacks is the confliction with the Bistic cards. I don't know if I would play that. I don't think it's mandatory personally, but I think that the fact that it replaces itself is definitely good. I think the Bistic cards kind of like outclass it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's mandatory. I do think like in general though, the card is like really insane. The fact that like compared to like people are comparing to with Pinkertops, that you can use it like going first, you can summon it, and another copy of itself for turn 3, as you have it on board as well for kind of like pseudo disruption. I think is like really good. It's a defensive card that like has a lot of value going first and going second, and helps you generate advantage. And overall, I think it's a really good card. I don't think it's mandatory.
Okay, what do you guys think about? I noticed we didn't mention any of like the ninja stuff. Like, is that kind of like just meme or like is that good?
Oh my god,
It seems
dude!
like
I spent like 3 hours, 4 hours in a call with somebody the other day trying to make ninjas work. Those cards are ass. I mean, they're like, you can do some stuff, some cool stuff with them, like some combos. You can set up like the Amorphage. You can just randomly summon that. Like, it's very clear Konami does not want ninjas to be decent. I'll say that. The cards are kind of. I wouldn't be worrying about ninja cards, to be honest.
yeah,
okay. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about Hanzo and his buddies at all.
Hanzo's not coming or not.
not this time, bro.
All right. What about the like another meme deck, either goatee stuff? What do you guys think of those cards?
I think the cards are good, but they're just like really underpowered. I don't think Fish has a lot of good generic support. I think it's a cool concept. I think their boss monster is like very powerful. Just banishes everything. But like I don't know, like Konami likes printing new cards recently. Like unless they want Archetype to be broken, like when they're doing like this experimental stuff, they'd be throwing in like battle phase effects. Like I know I've read one of the cards that says during the damage step when this card attacks. Like I'm like, dude, like we don't need cards that do stuff in the battle phase. Like if you want this Archetype to be good, then like give them the core things that every deck needs: a searcher, E-Telly, a good field spell, and like a removal card, and maybe a negate, and then let's see what happens.
I have no idea what the
I
Goaty
think
cards do, but yes.
I think one of the biggest things is like when you mentioned like legacy support and like building a good deck, I don't think that the goatee stuff has that yet. There was something that was coming out. I saw it on the ladder. I know you guys are like big on the DB ladder. So it was the more towards the end of the format before we had the ban list. There was a lot of labyrinth. As maybe like a counter to tier. Like that we are getting a new labyrinth card. I think it's Lady of Labyrinth.
Yep.
I don't, does that kind of make the deck like? Would it kind of squeeze into that category of like anti-tier? Because you kind of have tier, you have sprite, you kind of have everything else. Like a lot of some of it being like the anti-tier decks. Is that like a good anti-tier choice? Like if I don't want to play tier, I want to play anti-tiers.
I feel like if you want to play anti-tier, I'd probably look for something more like Flunder, where like your engine doesn't play into the Bista cards, and you have like tools to deal with the tier stuff. Because I don't know, like I haven't tested Labyrinth like that, but like I played, I've read the cards. It honestly doesn't impress me. The new card, Lady of Labyrinth, it's alright, but I don't see that. Oh, this card's amazing. And at the end of the day, you're still playing a trap deck, and Labyrinth seems like it has a lot of issues that trap decks do have. So I don't see Labyrinth being like something real, to be honest. Maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, I haven't really tested the deck like that, so maybe there's some guy out there with a Labyrinth spice who's coming up with something cool, but I doubt it.
Yeah. We also have like the new level 5 runics. I see people kind of using the runics as kind of like an engine, like even in tiers, being able to spit out rank 4s easier, and sprite obviously like Link and rank 2s. Is there something cheeky that we can kind of do? Like maybe you guys have tested with the new level 5 runic monster that's coming out.
I've
Frecky
tested
of
with the
Runic
card.
Prince.
The add back effect, I don't know how relevant it is. I think it's okay, like to add back like tip. But I think the most important part about that card is that it's 2,000 attack. I think that's the most important thing because none of the runic fusions are really beat sticks, and now that they have a beat stick, I think that's like pretty good. It's like just another card that you can like just summon in the battle phase, and now you can actually like beat over stuff.
I concur, Duelist.
I think the biggest single card, like outside of like the Bisted engines and then like Fenrir, the new Pranga Chops, we have the World Sea Dragon, Zealantis.
Zealantis.
That
Oh,
card
that
is
card is
crazy.
so good. That card is so good. It's like cards that shouldn't have been printed. I'm not saying it's the best card in the set, 'cause I don't think it is, but like card was printed specifically to abuse once per turn effect, not soft once per turn effects. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking with that one, but that card's really good. You can use it in Draco Slayer. You can use it in like I don't know, something random, like technically Infernity. You could like summon back because it doesn't return the monsters like something like Omega. Special summons them back. But when you banish monsters from the field and summon them back, something that triggers when special summoned, you can use it again. So like Archfiend. I mean, I don't think Infernity is good, but like just a random example that came in my head. There's a lot you can do with that card. I'll say that.
Yeah. Especially looping Ignisers. That's what it seems to do the best right now. It's not a very future-proof card. I think it's kind of okay because it's like a Link 4, I guess, and it's kind of sometimes it can be awkward because like if you have too many monsters on the field, so what I've seen in testing is that like if you have too many monsters on the field, it kind of makes the board state awkward to where like you're summoning back all these cards, you get all these bodies to reuse, but like your board space is like super full because it puts itself back into the main monster zone and it's a Link 4, so it's kind of awkward the Link count. So, but it's very card. It's a very good card. Yeah.
Got it. No, thanks for that insight. I guess as far as YCS mini goes, how are you guys preparing? Just like constant hours on DB, like with testing groups? Like, do you have like a recipe for success?
So personally, I'm not preparing because I'm not going to play in the event. Jibriel is. So Jibriel, you can tell him how you're going to prepare, how you're preparing.
Right now I'm just determining what I think is the best deck to play. Obviously, Like I'm streaming right now, so shout out to my stream. We've just been chilling out, testing everything really with the new set, getting ready for the event. I'm just trying to determine what I think is either the best deck to play or the best deck to counter what the best deck is.
I will
All I
say.
know
Okay.
is I'm 100% gonna have Splight Blue in my deck because Blue he deserves a YCS win. To be honest, he's been denied it since his
Maybe.
release in the TCG. So
I will say I'm not going to YCS Minneapolis. I'll answer the question as if I was going. If I were preparing, first thing I'd be thinking about is what I think the deck representation is going to be looking like at the event. And part of that, I think, is seeing what people at Utrecht, even though like it's going to be a different like format and all that. I think you can still get some ideas based on like what you think people like playing and whatnot. From, like Utrecht and the 3v3. I think it's a 3v3 this month. Yeah, so I'd be looking at that to get an idea about what people are going to be playing. Like when you deck build for an event, before you even start building your deck, the first thing you need to keep in mind is like, what are you building for? What's the expected meta? In terms of decks, I think Draco Slayer is really good. I think the Bistic cards are really good as well. I'd either be playing a deck that can abuse the Bistic cards really well, like Tier, or a deck that doesn't get affected by them. Doesn't get affected by them at all, basically. So that'd be something like Thunder, Materia, Draco Slayer, something like that. I think in terms of representation, though, I would expect Tier to be the most represented. I think that's a safe assumption. I think Sprite will still be represented a good amount. And then, as for other rogue stuff, we'll see. Yeah. I think that would be what I would do. I'd just be like testing the decks, playing with people, what different variants, yada yada yada.
Yeah, I think definitely building your deck, like the goal when you have that tier one contender, that's like a foregone conclusion, right? Tier is going to be most represented. You kind of build your main deck to kind of beat tiers, and then you kind of have a very generic side that kind of deals with most of the metas. So you may have like some cards in there to deal with some annoyances that you might face, like evenlies and cosmics, and you may have like some generic hand traps, maybe like Nib and Gamma on the side, or just like the Bistids. Kind of general ways I look at it, but definitely, like you said, Lund, just trying to prepare for the best decks. I personally really like events that happen right with new sets because it really challenges players to get out their comfort zones. That's what we like to do here at Ground Game. We don't like to wait for the meta to be defined. We like to define it. We like to really try to innovate. That comes with a lot of like tests. So like, yeah, there's more work, but you definitely get rewarded for putting in that work. I don't know. I don't like when the ban list comes out right before a tournament, but generally, new set is fine because you can kind of get an idea. But when they drop a ban list right before, it's like all the testing you did up into it kind of went out the window, and then you have like they kind of like scramble at the end, But
Yep.
I feel you. I will say Mini is there's gonna be a lot of new stuff for YCS Minneapolis. Like I think there's gonna be a bunch of new strategies. I think like the format YCS Mini will also push out some decks. Like Mathmech is a deck I think that benefited from the last ban list. But I think the problem Mathmech becomes a lot worse once this is an example. It becomes a lot worse once Darkwing Blast comes out because the Bistic cards are very good versus Mathmech. For one, you can use them to stop like the trap. They're not chaining it to the trap. You're using it like in their end phase to banish Diameter, dodge something like IP and Apollosa, or like a Call by the Grave. Or not Call by the Grave, both. But yeah, mainly the IP Apollosa thing. Also, the big thing versus Mathmech 2 is if they can't kill you, the deck becomes a lot worse. So you just like hold the Bistic cards for like your battle phase, and then it makes like the deck a lot worse. So I think Mathmech is kind of unplayable. Something like Sky Striker becomes a bit worse because you can just like easily banish Ray with the Bistic cards and just summon bodies. Kind of similar to like Mathmech. If you can just like summon a Bisted monster during like the battle phase, that's like kind of like annoying for the deck to deal with, I think. So pushes those decks out, but you get new decks like we mentioned before, like Dragon Link, kinda, Materia, which probably won't see much play, but there's Draco Slayer, which might not see a lot of play, but I think it's really solid still. Yeah, a lot's gonna change. Lots gonna change, even though the most represented decks will probably still just be Tier and Sprite. It'll be like different variants and shit.
I think Drytron's pretty good right now, but like going up into when the Bistic cards come out, like you feel like Drytron's also unplayable when the Bistic cards come out. I was even thinking you can abuse the Bistic cards in Drytron because you get 2 level 6s for Beatrice. You can't use it on your turn, but you can use it on your opponent's turn.
Yeah, you can't use it on your turn because of the restriction. I think Drytron gets a good bit worse too. That's another deck when the Bistic cards come out. And some people are saying like, well, Drytron was still playable when people were playing Cycle Reader and stuff, but like, imagine a world where like everybody is just main decking like 6 DD Crows at least. Like, yeah, Drytron probably not the move for many, so
Yeah.
that gets a good bit worse too.
Yeah, and there's no safe end board. Like even your Vantage Ruler, like if I just successfully summon one of the Vistas at 2500, I can just walk over the Vantage Ruler.
Yeah, that basically just says you have to like Natasha. And so yeah, it makes things more awkward for the deck.
No, I mean so far it's like been pretty good. I mean, do you have any like any closing thoughts as like people who are trying to get ready for Minia as an event? Like anything to close the podcast down?
I think what I said before is the most important. I think you either need to be playing a deck that utilizes, because I think the Vista card's going to be seeing a lot of play. So I either need to play a deck that utilizes the cards really well, like Tier we mentioned before, Beatrice and whatnot, or you need to be playing a deck that doesn't get affected by them at all. Like Draco Slayer, something like Lundrity, I guess, as an example, yada yada yada. So one of those two options. In terms of representation, will probably still be Tier and Sprite, so that's what you should be thinking about, but yeah. I think the Bistic cards are going to be the most impactful cards at the YCS, so you should deck build with them or deck build around them. That's my main thing.
I mean, I agree for the most part. I agree.
Yeah.
Bistic cards are just the best deck. I also think don't sleep. I also think don't sleep on the anti-tier decks because I think decks like Flunderies and Exo Sisters are also very good. I think Shifter is a very good card. And I think that the Shifter decks are still going to maintain their representation and continue to be good.
But one deck, enough.
Don't sleep on Mind. I was going to say, don't sleep on Mystic Mind.
Oh, that's true.
Another deck I think that wasn't mentioned. I mentioned one plant deck, but another deck that like did well before but hasn't really seen much play since is the Rika deck. Because an Avalon deck, I actually think that deck is really solid. I've always thought it has a solid tier matchup, but also like it's another deck that like isn't really affected by the Bistic cards like that. It can deal with those well, and yeah, I think that deck is really solid as well too. So, another deck to look out for, I think.
Definitely.
2 plant decks.
Yeah, I think you have an inherent advantage when you're playing new cards at a tournament because a lot of people don't like know what your cards do.
Exactly.
So that's one of the biggest things.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been real, and thank you guys for sharing and some insight and getting on the Metacast.
No problem.
Yeah, I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate you having us. And definitely everybody in my chat, shout out to Ground Gaming. They're doing some amazing stuff. Shout out to Isaiah Houston. He's a really dope dude. He's been killing it in the YCS circuit. So definitely shout out to him and go show him some support, guys. I appreciate it. Shout out to Lund, that's my homie. Shout out to the work that he's putting in with the spreadsheet and combo guide for the Darkwing Blast format. Definitely check that out once it comes out and on the 15th, I believe.
Stand your ground.